let's get to Cherry from 2021. It is a Apple TV Plus original, of course, done by Anthony and Joe Russo. Stars Tom Holland, Ciara Bravo, Jack Rayner, Forrest Goodluck. And the synopsis is Cherry drifts from college dropout to army medic in Iraq, anchored only by his true love, Emily. But after returning from the war with PTSD, his life spirals into drugs and crime as he struggles to find his place in the world. So they are, of course, most popular and well known for starting with Captain America, the Winter Soldier. They also did Civil War, and then did Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. And then they will be doing the next two Avengers films as well. They obviously have had a insane amount of success, both critically, audience-wise, and box office. I think, though, all considering, despite that, not a lot of people really know them by name. Like, if I say the Russo brothers, a lot of people don't know who that is. But if I say, oh, have you seen Winter Soldier or Endgame, whatever, most people have. In terms of their style, I wouldn't necessarily say they have a distinctive visual style. Like, I'm not looking at the screen saying, oh, that's a Russo brothers movie. It has to be. Which, that's not a criticism. You know, a lot of great filmmakers don't necessarily have that. There are still some identifiers, I would say, that I've caught on to over the years. Their films usually have very complex narratives, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of characters, a lot of world building. There's typically a political intrigue, government cover-up kind of feel. Most of their films have well choreographed action, not always, but typically I really enjoy the action in their films, and characters seem to usually be the focus no matter what. Sometimes that gets away from them, but I always find that certain characters stick out to me no matter what, even in their best and their worst films. As the synopsis says, it is about the character of Cherry, who he's a young kid, he falls in love with this girl, and then suddenly things go wrong. She decides to leave, go to this university, I think, that's out of the state, away from him, and he says, screw it, I'm just going to join the army because I have nothing else going on, and then is sent to Iraq. Terrible things happen, as you can imagine. He comes back with terrible anxiety, PTSD. He becomes a major drug addict, and he starts to rob banks and is at least marginally successful for a while until it eventually blows up in his face. This movie is for sure quite long. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes, I think. And I never was really bored. There were points where I was like, oh man, we still have a lot left in this. However, there's so much story in this. Whether it's true or not, it was well told to where I was always invested. Performance-wise, Tom Holland is very, very good in this. I don't love him across the board. I don't love him as Spider-Man. I find him to be a little overly whiny, and I don't always connect with him, so I usually prefer him out of Marvel, and I think this is by far his best performance. I know that he, in his real life, has had problems with alcoholism. I also wasn't expecting the visual style, going back to what I was just saying earlier, to be as stylized as it was. Again, that's something that I've read people think it's over-stylized. I disagree. I didn't mind at all that there were some clever camera tricks, some really interesting transitions, lens flares, things like that, slow-mo. I thought it fit the story, and I honestly appreciated that because to me, it just came across as we have a confidence in telling this story. One of the only issues, not that it's a big deal because it's a small part of the film, is when he does go to Iraq and there's one particular action sequence, and that location, it was so obvious they did not shoot that in the Middle East. It felt like they were at a back lot in California. And I looked it up, and I think they primarily shot this in California. having been in the Air Force myself, the basic training montage is very realistic, and all of the really uncomfortable things like the medical tests, the examinations, the different stress inducers and ridiculous things that happen, that felt like I was watching myself back in basic training. The death of the friend in Iraq, they're both these buddies who are just trying to get through as, everyone was, and that became a very big trauma for him later and helped bring about his drug problems. All of the bank robbery stuff, I don't know if that's exactly how he did it, but at least in terms of the movie itself, where he's trying to kind of be courteous, non-violent. I mean, there are points where he has a gun, and the final moment where he does just sort of give up on the street, I really thought that was a impactful moment. Then the last little chapter is him in prison and really trying to get his act together, trying to get parole. There's also the portrayal of him going to doctors, psychologists, I think both military and not, who just aren't able to give him what he needs, and they aren't understanding him. So that drives him further into the underground. Heavy 4 out of 5. Let's get to the second Russo brothers film, which is The Gray Man, a Netflix original that came out in 2022, 1 year later after Cherry. This one is written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who did the Marvel films with the Russos. It stars Ryan Gosling, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Billy Bob Thornton, Jessica Henwick, Alfre Woodard, Shea Wiggum. And the synopsis is, when the CIA's most skilled operative, whose true identity is known to none, accidentally uncovers dark agency secrets, a psychopathic former colleague puts a bounty on his head, setting off a global manhunt by international assassins. I just watched this one about a week ago. I like spy hitman movies, but something about this one at first just didn't sell me. This is very much, I would say, a mix between John Wick and then Mission Impossible with some of the stunts. So, Ryan Gosling, great actor. He's just killing it left and right. I was so surprised, not only when it was announced that he was going to be in this, but after watching it, I just don't understand, aside from, let's say, a shallow paycheck level, because it feels like his talents are totally wasted on this. There's so little to the character. I mean, he really is the Gray Man. And this, just putting it out there, of the 3 films I'm talking about, this would be my least favorite by a decent margin. I don't hate it. I still like it. It's passable, but not much better than that. The setup, as the synopsis says, he is on the run, and it just becomes, this global manhunt. And Chris Evans is this insane consultant or partner the CIA hires to kill him, and he's completely off the rails. He just breaks every rule, causes way more violence and death than anyone wants him to, but that character honestly had way more interesting writing, and the dialogue was very strong for that character. I loved Chris Evans in this. He had seemed to have a lot of fun. But if we're talking about the comparisons to, like John Wick, as I said, with those films, even from the first one, that has the death of the dog that was given to him by his wife, and it's the last thing that he had of her. So, of course, he's pissed. And so he gets back into his former life. And that's something that most people, at least for me, I can really get behind. Yeah, everything else is ridiculous, but that emotional drive for that character is always there. They try to do something kind of similar. It's this friendship, partnership that he has with this young daughter of one of the, I think the CIA heads or whoever, and he's her bodyguard, and there's a few scenes of him saving her life at the house and a few conversations, but you don't know anything about her, pretty much. There's so little time spent with them two together that I didn't really care that much about his journey to get this girl back when she's taken. The action is okay, probably their least effective action-wise. There's a few scenes like the city square where a bunch of cars are coming through. There's the train, and there's just a bunch of guns blaring in every direction, lots of destruction. That was probably the best. The opening has enough mystery to it, and it's shot well enough, and I like the location, so that had me interested. But after the city sequence, basically the last hour is all action. Most of it at this big estate. And I found in the pacing in that last hour, it really was inconsistent. Points I was really having fun. Other times I was getting very bored and just ready for it to wrap up. I like when Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling finally meet and they fight. And there are a few other things like the line of Ryan Gosling not wanting to throw a loaded gun to someone, like in the middle of a fight, which is true. You don't want to do that. And that's actually a very good safety tip. And they make a good joke out of that, because in most movies, you do see, all right, here's a shotgun that has a bunch of rounds, or a handgun or whatever, and that could easily go off once someone grabbed it the wrong way, or if it fell on the ground too hard. The airplane sequence was just totally ridiculous. Like, everything else is, for the most part, in a kind of reality, but that just lost me, and the CG I thought was not great either. So Billy Bob Thornton and Alfred Woodard were nice additions to the cast. Heavy 3 out of 5. All right, let's get to the last Russo brothers film that I'll be discussing, which is The Electric State. Came out in 2025. Stars Chris Pratt, Millie Bobby Brown, Woody Harrelson, Ke-Huy Quan, Woody Norman, Holly Hunter, Alan Tudyk, and a lot of others, Stanley Tucci. And the synopsis is: an orphan teen hits the road with a mysterious robot to find her long-lost brother, teaming up with a smuggler and his wisecracking sidekick. It is one of the most expensive movies ever made to date. It had a budget of around $320 million, which is just insane for any movie. But even for this one, I'll just say I don't know where all that money went, really. I know the reviews for this one were quite mixed. Some people just completely trashed it. I've seen it twice now. I saw it in the first weekend it came out, and I just rewatched it. I thought that the ridiculousness of this world was so enjoyable. Like this robot rebellion being run by the Mr. Peanuts icon, or figurine, whatever. Now, I don't know exactly which things were CG and what were actual animatronics, which is a compliment to the movie. I know that the main robot with the huge yellow head, one of my favorite character designs in a long, long time. I love that character. That was primarily CG. But going back to the beginning, this takes place in the 90s. Millie Bobby Brown has this long-lost brother who she wants to find. She sets out on this journey, breaks out of this orphanage or something similar, which is run by Jason Alexander, the guy from Seinfeld. That was very fun. And I like the idea, the creative element of people living in these robot simulations, like virtual reality, but they can actually control a robot walking around, and they can just be sitting in their chair. Talking a few negatives, though, not a big fan of Millie Bobby Brown. I'm not a huge Stranger Things fan, so I can't speak to all of the things that she does performance-wise in that show. But what I've seen her in films, aside from Enola Holmes, there's something about her that feels kind of phony, and I'm not always buying her emotion in a lot of scenes. So she was by far my least favorite of the main group. Chris Pratt is just being Chris Pratt. Basically, he's essentially Star-Lord in this, another version of Star-Lord. He's not bad. I don't mind him, and they're good together, him and Millie Bobby Brown. I like his wig, as silly as it is. Woody Harrelson as Mr. Peanut is great. The flashbacks to Millie Bobby Brown's past of her losing her family in this car crash, and that's why she's all alone and being this loner kid in school and not wanting to interact with a lot of people. The first meeting of Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown, and you see Giancarlo Esposito, I believe his name is, who is in everything, it seems like these days, great actor, and Chris Pratt's underground home, quote unquote. When they meet Mr. Peanut at that mall, the look of that mall and all the robots you see, the initial sequence of them being attacked outside of the mall. And there's decent humor throughout, I find. It wasn't super laugh out loud funny, but it was enough chuckles to keep me going. And I know that some people have criticized it for being a lot lighter in tone than the original source material. I haven't gone through the original book, but I don't really mind that one way or the other. The final climactic fight, I thought that was pretty good overall. Ki Hu Kwan, I can never say his name right, sorry if I butchered it. He has a fairly small part, but I always like to see him in things, and I'm glad he's had a bit of a renaissance. Jenny Slate is another fun voice. The final resolution with Millie Bobby Brown and her brother, that emotionally, I thought that was effective, and I was interested to see how that would all turn out. Oh, and quickly, the score by Alan Silvestri, who's worked a lot with the Russo brothers. Very good score. Has certain elements of what he's done before intentionally, like Back to the Future and some other 80s, 90s films that are in the same vein. And even though, yeah, sure, you're calling back to things, I thought there was enough variety, enough mixture, and enough freshness as well. Heavy 4 out of 5.